I'm Karen Woodfork. I'm the course director for the medical pharmacology class at West Virginia University, and I've been course director since 2011. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is the evolution of something over these years called DIY Exam, which has evolved to become an online learning community that I developed to support students as they navigate the complexity of applying pharmacology information to USMLE format case-based exam questions. So first, what is an online learning community? Well, we think about online learning communities originally as being defined as the community itself that develops within a virtual environment. But what it's come to mean more recently is just simply the software platform, the website that hosts the online learning community. In any case, encompassing both of these definitions, the goal of an online learning community is going to be to improve communication skills among students, enhance their collaboration and their interactivity, and very important during the time of COVID, to develop peer relationships that help to counteract the isolation that students experience during an online learning environment. Self-directed learning is something that I think we're all familiar with as a requirement of the LCME for accreditation, and also for its importance really in serving as a microcosm of what students are going to be doing once they graduate into their professional careers. And so SDL is going to incorporate students being able to identify their individual learning needs and then locate the information that they need to target their specific learning needs. Then the student will analyze and appraise the information that they gather, synthesize it, and communicate it back to other students who will then provide them with feedback on their communication. DIY Exam is something that I developed as a self-directed learning activity that now exists within an online learning community in medical pharmacology. So first, a little bit about medical pharmacology. Historically, medical pharmacology has spanned the entire second year of the curriculum. It's integrated by organ system with 3 other courses: microbiology and immunology, pathology, and physical diagnosis and clinical integration. We have currently switched over to a new curriculum in which we just began this year, in which pharmacology is taught in the second half of the first year and the end of, well, the fall semester of the second year before they go into their clinical rotations. So right now, this spring, we were running 2 curricula simultaneously. I'll be referring to the old curriculum, but DIY Exam is continuing into the new curriculum. Okay, pharmacology. It has 3 graded components: block exams, an NBME subject exam, and active and engaged learning, which includes self-directed learning. DIY Exam is a self-directed learning activity that occurs once every block in the course. There are 11 blocks in the course, and it is going to be done once per block. Now, why did I develop self-directed or the DIY Exam activity? Well, way back in 2011, when I first became course director, I noticed that there was really a steep learning curve for students as they began to try to incorporate the complexity of pharmacology information into USMLE style case-based integrated exam questions. And what I saw was, after they went through the foundations unit in block 1, as soon as the drug-based information started to come in, course grades on average began to drop. And then when the really hard pharmacology kicked in block 4, which is our autonomic and cardiovascular pharmacology, there was a major decrease in overall exam grades. After exam 4, the exam grades started to come back up again, but I thought, this really shouldn't be the case. We need to do something about this. But I was kind of unclear as to what to do until in that year, I met with a student who I had been counseling and helping, and that student told me that they had been doing this thing, which was really helping them. And I had noticed the students' exam scores had just shot up. The student had organized a group of students who would write their own exam questions and share them with each other and get together and talk about them. And I said, well, who are all these other students? Would they be willing to talk with me? And some of them did. And all of these students had experienced significant increases in their exam scores. And I thought, this is great. We've got to do this with other students. So I piloted it in 2013. I had a single instance of DIY exam in which I had each student write a case-based exam question and an explanation of why the right answer was right and the wrong answers were wrong, and then share that with other people in a small group. That seemed to go pretty well. So I incorporated it into an activity that was done each block, each of the 11 blocks. Okay, so the format that I used in the 2013 through 18 years was students wrote a question and an explanation of the correct and incorrect answers. They would submit this as an assignment on our learning management system, which is called SOL. And then I would also have the students meet in small groups, and sometimes they would meet in person on their own time outside of class time. They'd have to organize that. Or other times I tried having them use Google Docs to share their practice questions and an online chat to talk about them. But in any case, those were the two formats we used. I collated their questions. I posted them on the LMS for them to use as practice questions. And I graded all of these questions so that students would get full credit for submitting a question. Not that it had to be totally correct, but it had to meet certain criteria for being a real, true case-based integrated exam question, which was not a recall question or wasn't a case stuck in front of a recall question or something like that. So this was a lot of work for everyone. And the good news about it was that actually, once I started using DIY exam, students' exam scores did not just plummet at exam 4. They did take a little bit of a dive. Okay, so this is pre-DIY exam. And you can see that after the foundations block in 1, then when the drugs kicked in, you started to see a drop in scores a little bit, and then a big drop at exam 4. After I implemented it, I'm comparing 3-year blocks of time here, but this trend holds the same for here on out. Really a little drop, but then no giant plummet at block 4. And in fact, they are higher overall. Now, significant, maybe not, but I wasn't seeing that drop at block 4. The bad news. One of the things was I could not ascertain that in these online chat meetings or these in-person meetings that students arranged outside of class time, that they were actually comparing questions at all. I didn't know if they were getting anything from it at all. And when I looked at the chat logs, they were really inconsistent. Sometimes people really did great and had wonderful conversations. Otherwise, they just said things like, I like Sarah's question. Yeah, I like Sarah's question too. Okay, what are you guys doing tonight? They thought I wasn't looking at their logs, but anyway. Sometimes students would submit poor quality questions, and over half the students did not even look at the practice exams that I posted that were composed of other students' questions. And students really didn't like it. The activity rated really poorly on course evaluations. They felt like it was busy work, even though I told them that I showed them the graph of exam scores going up, but that wasn't cutting the mustard. They just didn't like it. In fact, about 40% of the students rated DIY exam as their least favorite activity. Plus, I spent a great deal of time grading these things, which was probably not the best thing either. And, I was thinking, I kept doing it year after year and telling them about how their grades come up because of this, kind of feeling like a parent who's saying, eat your broccoli, it's going to make you big and strong. And the kid spits it out every time. But then my colleague, Leah Hammer, told me about something called Packback. And I investigated it and thought, yeah, this would be great for the course to maybe make DIY exam more fun and more approachable. So what is Packback? Packback is an AI-supported, artificial intelligence-supported online discussion platform that is designed to enable curiosity. So it's supposed to motivate thought and, as their website says here, inquiry-driven discussion. So what they do in Packback is you can make posts, which are kind of like Facebook posts, and then you make comments on posts, which are kind of like Facebook comments. And instead of doing likes, like on Facebook, you give things sparks. Sparks are questions that that will pique your curiosity or spark your curiosity. And then there's the AI end of things. The AI rates or grades the quality of the posts. So there are certain guidelines on submissions. They have to be complete sentences. They have to have a certain level of complexity. They can't be an open-ended question. They have to be a specific question. They can't involve profanity, which actually has posed a little bit of difficulty in a medical class because people talk about body parts and excretion and stuff like that. And sometimes posts will get moderated until Packback's human side of the moderation looks at it and says, oh, yes, this is the medical class. They are allowed to talk about genitalia. So the AI grades the quality of their posts and gives them immediate feedback on the quality of their posts. So if they've forgotten something, like to cite the source, or if their question is open-ended, or if it's not really a very complicated question, it lets them know. So they get immediate feedback on improving their question. And by the way, I am not affiliated with Packback in any way. I use their product. I don't invest in them, etc. Okay, so Packback, here's the interface. You can see that you get a feed just like on Facebook, only the feed is questions with a short summary of it and the question itself, and you can click on it to go to it and see what that question is. So the student will just see their feed, which has all of these different questions posted by different people. They can have different avatars that express their own personalities. Here's an example of a question that a student has posted where you can see it's a case-based question, and then there are these multiple choice answers, and then there are sources that are given here. And then a student can click add response to add their response to describe why the right answer is right and why each of the other answer choices is wrong. Here's a response where a student is talking about this. And I posted this one for a particular reason. Not only is it a response where it shows that the student is giving some additional information on the question beyond just why the right answer is right and the wrong answer is wrong, but looked up something in another source to add to the discussion. Not only that, but this student did it on the eve of the exam, which is past the deadline for submissions for my counting the points. So this person just did it because they were curious. Okay, so this kind of thing happened all the time during COVID because students needed to interact and they didn't have in-person interaction. So this gave them a way to discuss information, which they would ordinarily probably be doing when they were sitting next to each other after class. So during the time that I used Packback, which was from 2018 on, I got a lot of positive feedback from students. They liked being able to apply knowledge to clinical scenarios. They liked the way that it catered to the current material. They liked being able to pick up on things they may have missed in their own studies. And it was kind of like a nice built-in system, and it was easy to use. They really liked that. Up until last year, some students hated it. People complained a lot about the price. It costs $25. And they admittedly, medical school is very expensive and all of those expenses add up. But there was a lot of complaint about having to spend $25 on something else that they had to do. Students would prefer, some of them wanted just the practice questions from a professor and not having to do this other stuff. And it was just extra work, so they hated it. However, since implementing Packback for DIY exam, the students' ratings of DIY exam have improved dramatically. Now, as I said earlier, before I used Packback, 39% of the students said that DIY exam was their least favorite activity. Post Packback, 1819 and 1920, only 13% said it was their least favorite activity. And as of today, I only have 15 course evaluations back on the 2020-21 year, but of those, 13% still said it was their least favorite activity, and I got one glowing verbal comment saying how much they loved Packback. So we'll see what happens by the end of the evaluation period. Now, my looking at the questions, the average quality of the questions has significantly improved since implementing Packback. When I used to post all of those questions on our LMS and I'd look through them, and a bunch of them were just, straight recall questions. They weren't very thoughtful. People didn't look up other information. Now, the questions are great. More students write really superior exam questions. And I think this may be due to a couple of things. One is that this is a Facebook-like interface. They're posting in front of the whole class. It's not anonymous. I don't make it anonymous. so they know each other. And when they write their answers and explain the answer choices, this is in writing. So it requires a certain amount of thought to put something into writing, which isn't necessarily the case when people are just sitting around discussing it themselves and they just really want to get out of there so they can study some more. Okay, so this demands a greater deal of performance. Now, another thing that happens with Packback is there's something called a learner leaderboard where they take those AI generated scores and they show like the top 5 students who have those the best AI generated scores. Now, I had a little bit of concern because sometimes students don't like to know how the rest of the class is doing because when they compare themselves to the rest of the class, they feel bad about their own performance. I haven't heard anything from students about the learner leaderboard. No one has complained about it yet, probably because the grades don't come directly from that. And it's not like it's showing what their grades are because so much goes into the learner leaderboard, not just the quality of the questions, but how many sparks people have, how many posts they've made. It's really not indicative of their grade in the DIY exam format. So I think that's probably why students have accepted the learner leaderboard, and they're really kind of competitive on it. And there seems to be some, 1 minute, okay. Finally, grading is easier, okay, because there is a certain score cutoff, which I can note that if the student score is below that, then I need to look at it and see if it's okay. And if it's above another cutoff, then it is 100% certain almost that it is okay. Now, during COVID, a few things have changed. One, students haven't complained about DIY exam in mid-course feedback at all, not even the $25 fee. The limited course evals from 2021, the comments showed no complaints. We're still at 13%, really disliking it. Qualitatively, looking at Packback discussion, there's a lot more back and forth communication, and the quality of the questions as monitored by the curiosity points on average are higher. So this is 2018-19, a year with no COVID, 2020-21 entirely online. And you can see that this is definitely a higher bar, although not statistically significant. 2019-2020 falls somewhere in between. And I think a lot of things went into that score there. But anyway, so that is all I have. And if you have any questions, please ask them. I'll be happy to answer.